Off the wage bill at Parkhead comes Pat Bonner, who signed a 2-year contract with Kilmarnock. 34-year-old Bonner is currently preparing to play in the World Cup finals with the Republic of Ireland.
Pat Bonner's move from Celtic to Kilmarnock may hang in the balance as well. He said he'll sign, but a new manager might persuade him to stay, and he's still a registered Celtic player. Former Celtic star Tommy Burns is the Kilmarnock manager, and he seems certain to be the top target as replacement for McCarry.
Sport now, and Forbes McFall is here with the latest from the golf at Gleneagles.
Thanks, Alan. We'll be going to the golf in a few minutes, but football first. Celtic Managing Director FERGUS McCANN has confirmed that the former player and current Kilmarnock boss, Tommy Burns, is his #1 choice for the Parkhead manager's job. In a statement issued this afternoon, McCann described him as a first-rate candidate for the position. But McCann added there have been no formal talks about the manager's job because he's been unable to obtain permission from Kilmarnock to approach Burns. Meanwhile, Kilmarnock chairman Bob Fleeting, who's in the USA, said tonight he'd break his American holiday to return to Scotland to have talks with Tommy Burns.
All the details, Forbes.
Thanks, Jackie. Kilmarnock chairman Bobby Fleeting has made a last-ditch attempt to talk manager Tommy Burns out of a move to Celtic. At a secret location in Glasgow today, Fleeting, who cut short a holiday in America, had urgent discussions with his player-manager in an effort to persuade Burns to stay at Rugby Park. The former Celtic and Scotland player was this week confirmed as FERGUS McCann's #1 choice for the Parkhead manager's job.
Bob Fleeting this morning and told him he wanted to talk to Celtic about taking the vacant manager's job. The meeting was held away from Rugby Park, and Kilmarnock later refused to issue any statement regarding what was discussed. Celtic said tonight they were still waiting for Kilmarnock's permission to talk to Burns. Well, despite the Killie board's obvious disappointment, it looks unlikely that anything or anyone will now stop the bandwagon, which seems to be carrying Burns to the manager's office at Parkhead. Rugby Park assistant Billy Stark is still on holiday, but he would be favourite to take over at Killie should Burns agree to having Tommy Craig as his managerial partner at Celtic. If Stark does rejoin Burns, though, Wraith manager Jimmy Nicholl has already been recommended to the Kilmarnock board as a possible alternative. Rebuilding work continued at an almost derelict Rugby Park this morning as supporters gathered outside in the hope of persuading Tommy Burns to change his mind. Here in this part of Ayrshire, Tommy rates in a par with Rabbie in the Burns Stakes, but it looks like the final chapter of the latest Kilmarnock edition has now been written.
He's been here 4.5 with the playing side as well, but he's only halfway through his job here. The ground's been rebuilt. He's done a really good job. Semi-final of the Cup, unlucky not to get to the final, and he's kept us in the Premier League at the first go, and very, very sad day if we lose Tommy Burns.
As Tommy said though, Jim, there was an air of inevitability about it that Celtic would eventually come for Tommy Burns.
Well, he's turned out to be third choice for Celtic. First they wanted Bobby Robson and then Kenny Dalglish. I think myself, Tommy, would be disappointed being third choice.
As the fans resigned themselves to losing their manager, at least one man inside Rugby Park was feeling good about the latest developments. Burns left Rugby Park in tears this afternoon after resigning as manager of Kilmarnock. The Killie board had refused to back down on their insistence that Burns couldn't talk to Celtic about a move back to Parkhead as manager. Vice Chairman James Moffat asked Burns if anything could persuade him to stay. Burns said no and tendered his resignation. The way then seemed clear for Tommy Burns to talk to Celtic, but Kilmarnock chairman Bob Fleeting said tonight that his club would continue to hold Burns' registration as a player until Celtic owner Fergus McCann agreed to discuss possible compensation. Kilmarnock insisted again that they've tried to talk to Celtic about a possible financial settlement, but that Celtic have refused to discuss the matter. Fergus McCann was unavailable for comment as this programme came on air. The same applied to Tommy Burns. Kilmarnock have informed both the SFA and the Scottish League about the position they now find themselves in. Tommy Burns' contract as player-manager at Rugby Park was due to run for another 2 years. As far as Killie are concerned, the fact that Burns has resigned as manager doesn't affect the playing part of his contract. Chairman Bob Fleeting insists that he and Burns remain personal friends, despite his manager's eagerness to talk to Celtic. Burns, he says, is being messed about by Celtic, not by Kilmarnock. Fleeting insists he's asked Celtic for a meeting which Fergus McCann has refused. Tommy Burns, he says, is the brightest young managerial prospect in the country. Kilmarnock cannot afford to let him go without a fight for financial compensation. The former man...
Is it a return to paradise? Tommy Burns resigns from Kilmarnock.
Well, football now. Tommy Burns has resigned as player-manager of Kilmarnock. He is now expected to take over at Celtic. Colin McCann reports.
The news of Tommy Burns' resignation follows weeks of speculation about who would take over as manager of Celtic to replace Lou McCarry, who was sacked by Chief Executive Fergus McCann last month. Burns was named by McCann as the preferred candidate last week. The former Celtic player joined Kilmarnock 2 years ago. He led the club to promotion to the Premier League in 1993 and to the Scottish Cup semi-final in April this year. In May, the club avoided relegation on the last day of the season. Burns was a popular figure at Rugby Park, and the club chairman cut short a holiday in America to return to Glasgow in a bid to persuade him to stay and honour his contract. However, this afternoon it was confirmed that he was leaving.
3:30 today, Tommy Burns resigned as manager of Kilmarnock. The last question asked of him by my vice chairman, Jim Moffat, was, is there anything we can do to entice you to remain here? The answer was no. We have retained his contract as manager and his contract as player, and until suitable compensation agreements have been reached with Celtic, we have not given Tommy Burns permission to either speak to Celtic or most certainly sign for Celtic.
However, this evening it's believed Burns is attending a meeting at Parkhead, with an announcement of his return to Celtic Park imminent.
Tommy Burns has resigned as manager of Premier League Kilmarnock after saving them from relegation last season. Speculation is rife that he'll now join his old club Celtic as Lou McCarry's replacement. If he does, Kilmarnock say they'll report the Glasgow club to the Scottish FA for breaching regulations. They're not happy about him going.
Has quit as player-manager of Kilmarnock. He's now expected to take over from the sacked Lou McCarry at Celtic. The Parkhead club, though, is saying little.
Any word on Tommy Burns?
No word tonight.
No, will be an announcement tomorrow, do you expect?
Maybe a couple of days, we'll see.
Okay, have you been in touch with him today?
No, I have nothing else to say right now, thanks, sorry.
Excuse me.
Who's Scotland? Not very much at the moment.
No announcement tomorrow then, Fergus?
No, we'll see how things go.
Have you spoken to Mr Burns today?
Not today, but bye now.
And that's it from me tonight. Good night.
The Scottish football club Kilmarnock is seeking compensation after losing their manager Tommy Burns to Celtic. Kilmarnock claim that Celtic approached Burns illegally. He's been named as the club's new manager today following the dismissal of Lou McCarry earlier this summer. Burns, a former Celtic player, has been given a 3-year contract to try to rejuvenate the club's fortunes.
In Reporting Scotland with Jackie Bird.
It's not over yet. Recite workers in London for 11th hour campaign. Families of murder victims fight back and demand more support. Kilmarnock threatens to sue Celtic over Burns. They dominate the headlines once again. It's over to Forbes McFall in the boardroom at Celtic Park.
Thanks, Jackie. After weeks of speculation, Tommy Burns has been appointed as Celtic's manager. And tomorrow, Alec McLeish is expected to be appointed as Motherwell's new boss. But first, the return of Tommy Burns to paradise. It was another packed news conference at Parkhead. Tommy Burns introduced to the media as Celtic's new manager. The club's chief executive, Fergus McCann, said Burns had accepted a 3-year contract.
He has strong leadership qualities, and he has a reputation for integrity that's second to none. He has a dedication and interest in Celtic itself, and he has a knowledge of Celtic, both as a player in the past and since then, and I think that's a big advantage.
As a player, 15 years at Parkhead, Burns had a passionate commitment to the club. Well respected by the fans, he was part of the celebrations when Celtic won the double 6 years ago. Then, as Kilmarnock's player-manager for the last 2 years, more success, lifting the club into the Premier League and keeping it there.
I think Celtic Football Club's probably at their lowest ebb in a long time. And I seen the opportunity to go back and try and put something back into the club. I mean, I'm no the perfect article or got a magic wand or anything like that, but I think I could go back and give them something to help them to become better again.
What are your priorities?
My priorities are basically to get a good staff of people alongside me, and albeit there'll be some already here, to get a competitive team on the park.
News of Burns' appointment was well received by Celtic fans who'd gathered outside Parkhead to wish him well. But there were mixed feelings whether he could deliver a trophy.
In the long term, of a good appointment, but short term, I'm a wee bit dubious as whether he has enough experience.
I think it's a great appointment, and as a player, he gave everything for Celtic, so I think he'll give everything for as a manager as well.
Fergus McCann said Burns would get money for new players, but he wouldn't say how much. He made it clear Kilmarnock would not be getting any compensation.
We don't have any obligations to Kilmarnock, whatever.
Can you be quite clear about that? You will not be compensating Kilmarnock in any way?
I don't see any reason why we should.
Have you checked with the Scottish Football League that you're acting properly?
We've checked with the rules, of course, and we think we're doing the proper thing, and if we're not, well, obviously we'll deal with that.
In the Jockstein Lounge this morning, Tommy Burns said the events of the last...
Of course, and we think we're doing the proper thing, and if we're not, well, obviously we'll deal with that.
In the Jockstein Lounge this morning, Tommy Burns said the events of the last few days had been dreadful, but he had great respect for the Kilmarnock board. He would not be drawn on whether his former club should receive compensation. So, Tommy Burns in place here at Parkhead, and Fergus McCann saying he won't give Kilmarnock a penny in compensation. Well, naturally enough, their chairman, Bobby Fleeting, isn't too happy. In a statement issued this afternoon, he said Kilmarnock will pursue vigorously their legitimate claim for compensation. As Nick Webster reports, legal action could soon follow.
Kilmarnock consider themselves a go-ahead club, with the construction of a new multi-million-pound stand nearly complete and big plans for next season after missing the drop last time round. Chairman Bobby Fleeting is angered by the loss of Burns, who he says has been instrumental in the club's recent success, and today threatened to take Celtic to court to settle the matter. He says if the league and SFA don't act, he'll be forced to protect the club's interests himself.
Once we realised that Tommy Burns didn't want to be here, all we would have done was fought for get the compensation that we felt we were due as an asset, a major asset of this club. Get the compensation we were due, and that would have been the end of the matter. Tommy would have left here with a handshake and not a smile, a sadness because we're friends. But Tommy knows that my hands are tied in this matter, and that it's now moved on to the legal stage, and I've got to take the advice that the lawyers give, and I've got to do everything that they tell me now.
The Killie chairman believes that the way Celtic negotiated a contract with Tommy Burns is bad for all Scottish football. He says it's damaged the game's image north of the border.
That's probably maybe the saddest part of the whole thing, is that my vice chairman, Jim Moffat, who is a very well-respected businessman in the Scottish business scene, very well known, he came to me and he said to me that, everyone's telling me that this is just football, Scottish football. And he said, if this is Scottish football, I want no part of it.
There is some better news for Killie fans though. Chairman Fleeting moved to end any uncertainty over who'll succeed Burns by saying he'd like Billy Stark to step in as the next boss at Rugby Park. Nick Webster reporting Scotland, Kilmarnock.
Well, with me here in the Celtic boardroom is Celtic's Chief Executive, Fergus McCann. Fergus, whatever about the legalities of it all, don't you think that Kilmarnock are due some compensation for losing Tommy Burns 2 years to run in his contract?
Well, this is a matter between the individual who wants to resign and the company to which he's contracted. If they feel that they have any claim against Tommy, I presume they will act accordingly. I have to leave that for them to decide. I know that Tommy's a gentleman. He will meet any obligations they may have.
But do you feel as a club that you're open to any legal action now from
I don't
Kilmarnock?
think so. I think we're in a position whereby Tommy applied for this position. He knew it was available, and he was appointed. And just like you wanted to take another job, does your new company go looking for your old company and say, we'd like to give you some money? I don't see why Kilmarnock should profit from this situation. I think they've been very well served by Tommy Burns, and I hope they wish him well. And I think that Tommy obviously had a difficult decision to make. He was very happy at Kilmarnock, but this was an opportunity. I think that he wanted to better himself, and I think he should be allowed to do so.
But isn't this going to sour relations between the two clubs?
Well, I hope not. I think that in a reverse situation, I presume that Kilmarnock have been quite entitled to advertise a position and have someone, a real Kilmarnock fan, perhaps working at Celtic, to apply to work there.
Fergus, thank you for joining us this
It's a
evening and
pleasure.
talking to us. Thank you. Well, some more.
Thanks very much indeed, Kay. We'll start with football tonight. Kilmarnock will seek compensation for the loss of their manager, Tommy Burns, who was confirmed as Celtic's new boss today. Burns walked out on Kilmarnock yesterday and has signed a 3-year deal with the Parkhead club.
Returning to his first love, but not in the circumstances of his choosing. After 4.5 successful years with Kilmarnock, Burns resigned in tears yesterday as the two clubs fought a war of words over compensation. Managing Celtic has always been his dream, but leaving Kilmarnock has been a nightmare.
Dreadful, really. Dreadful. I think that is football. That is football. I think I had to do what I felt was the best decision for me. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do.
A player for Celtic in their glory days, Burns says he wants to instill passion, pride and self-belief into the Celtic squad. But Kilmarnock may yet throw a spanner in the works. Burns' contract with his former club still had 2 years to run. Now they're demanding substantial compensation.
I don't see any reason why there should be any compensation to Kilmarnock for any purpose. If a person applies for a position, and that's entirely his decision, and the decision of Celtic Club between him and the club he joins.
Contractual difficulties aside, Burns' appointment is seen as a winner with the fans.
Tommy Burns will bring back the Celtic Football Club, what's been missing for a long, long time.
As long as we stop Rangers getting a 9 in a row, that's all I'm worried about.
Their fourth manager in 4 years, it's high time Celtic fans had something to smile about. Brian Thompson, Sky News, Glasgow.
Manager Billy Stark has resigned. He's expected to join up with Tommy Burns at Celtic Park on Friday. Kilmarnock have refused to accept Stark's resignation. The club have asked the football authorities to investigate the loss of their management team. And Chairman Bob Fleeting says Kilmarnock will be taking legal action. Tommy Burns' departure to Celtic Park was bad enough for Kilmarnock. Now the loss of Billy Stark, a bitter blow to the Ayrshire club. They had hoped Stark would take over the managerial reins at Rugby Park, but now he too has quit. Following successful spells with both Aberdeen and Celtic, Stark moved to Kilmarnock first as a player, then became assistant manager 2 years ago. The Players' Union believes Kilmarnock could now have a case for compensation.
There's only one other comparable situation concerning Peter Cormack, who was an Hibernian player and is something like 9 months of his contract left. He left to take the job at Partick Thistle. The two clubs could not agree in compensation, and that was determined by the football authorities. That's the only case that's close and parallel to this.
So do you think that Kilmarnock should be compensated for losing the services of both Tommy Burns and Billy Stark?
I think that the custom and tradition in football has been when managers leave mid-contract, there is some form of settlement between the two clubs. Our objective is to ensure that these two players go on and manage without any hassle, and I'm hoping earnestly that the clubs can get together and discuss an arrangement.
Signed a 3-year contract to succeed Lou Macari. Burns was a Celtic player for 15 years before joining Kilmarnock.
Details is Forbes McFall.
Thanks, Jackie. Football first. Kilmarnock have withdrawn the court action they were pursuing against their former management team of Tommy Burns and Billy Stark. It had been expected that a petition would be heard today at the Court of Session, alleging Burns and Stark had broken their contracts at Rugby Park by joining Celtic. Confirming the court action had been called off, Kilmarnock Chairman Bob Fleeting said in a statement, "We feel the attention focused on this event is not in the best interest of the parties involved or Scottish football." But Kilmarnock say they'll continue to pursue their claim for compensation. The club has already lodged a complaint with the football authorities. Celtic's chief executive Fergus McCann says compensation is not warranted, but he could soon be facing a legal action from another aggrieved party. Sacked Celtic boss Lou Macari reportedly has confirmed he will sue the Parkhead board for breach of contract.
Tonight's sporting headlines with Rob McLean.
Kilmarnock, who lost Tommy Burns and his number 2, Billy Stark, to Celtic, hope you're following this, today advertised for a replacement manager. The Rugby Park club have already had 20 applications for the job. Anyone else has till Friday to declare an interest. They'd like to have the vacancy filled before they head for a pre-season tour of Ireland at the end of the month.
Rob.
Thanks, Jackie. Celtic manager Tommy Burns has made his first moves towards bringing new players to the club. He's able to concentrate on on-field requirements, having now completed his management lineup. It was confirmed today that Billy Stark, formerly his assistant at Kilmarnock, is taking on the same job with Celtic. And Davy Hay returns to the club as chief scout, 7 years after being sacked as manager. Tommy Burns today completed the first phase of his rebuilding job at Celtic when he announced the appointment of Stark and Hay to his management team. Goalkeeper Pat Bonner joined the coaching setup. For Hay, it's an emotional return. In 1987, a year after guiding them to a championship win, he became the first Celtic manager to be sacked.
I think initially there was a bit of bitterness in my heart for a period of time. I was hurt at that particular period, but I've been back to Celtic Park since then, and although probably my body had left Celtic Park at that time, my soul had never left the place. I actually feel as good today as I did when I was appointed manager, how many years ago? 11 years ago. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's the start of a fresh beginning for Celtic.
Tommy Burns first developed a working relationship with Billy Stark and discovered they were on the same wavelength when the pair were Celtic players. They were later reunited off the park running the Kilmarnock team. As with the departure from Rugby Park of Burns, there were some harsh words directed at Billy Stark as he tendered his resignation.
People are always saying things that they get in the heat of the moment. It's an emotional game, and you know, there's no hard feelings on any side. I mean, I think you can understand that Kilmarnock would be disappointed. We fully understand that, but as I say, you try to make the best decision for you and your family, and you know, hopefully we've done that.
Team reconstruction is next for Burns and co. Young Dundee winger Neil McCann is one possible target as the management team try to breathe new life into the setup. Burns admits he's now thinking about new players.
We've made a couple of inquiries about players, and again it's important. I think any money that we spend I think has to be spent on the right quality, and also players that can serve us for a number of years, as opposed to going and maybe panic buying, spending a lot of money, paying those players a lot of money, and then maybe 2 or 3 years down the road we don't get any money back for them. And I don't want to fall into that trap, so I'll take my time and make sure that the players I get are the right ones for Celtic Football Club.
Tommy Burns pointing the way ahead.
Now, the war of words between Celtic and Kilmarnock has escalated today. Parkhead MD Fergus McCann has denied that the Rugby Park club has ever asked to be compensated for the loss of manager Tommy Burns. Kilmarnock chairman Bobby Fleeting said he's completely confused by Mr McCann's latest statement.
Totten took charge of his 6th Scottish League club tonight when he finally agreed a 3-year deal as manager of Kilmarnock. 4 days of talks between Totten and his new club ran parallel with resignation discussions at East Fife and with his full-time employers Goodyear. The new man flies to Ireland tomorrow to meet up with his new players. As he left, Kilmarnock's vice-chairman James Moffat declared that Totten was the man with all the answers. Kilmarnock turned to the vastly experienced Totten last Thursday after Raith Rovers made it clear that Jimmy Nicholl was not available. The former Rangers assistant manager has already been in charge at Alloa, Falkirk, Dumbarton, St Johnstone and East Fife. His sacking by St Johnstone 2 seasons ago was met with disbelief, given the dramatic progress he'd made with a small club in a short time. Now back in the big time, Totten is relishing the challenge ahead.
First and foremost, I didn't apply for the job, you know, so obviously delighted when Mr Payton phoned me. But Kilmarnock, I come here as a player and brought their teams as a manager, and tremendous atmosphere here. The fans have been fantastic. It's a great club, they're very ambitious, and I'm delighted to be here.
Do you think the fans will take to him quickly, because they did like Tommy Burns, didn't they?
Tommy Burns was hugely popular here, but he did leave us at a bad time, and a time when the club was in transition with a new stadium. And I think this man Totten has all the answers, and we'll see how he performs in the field.
All I've ever said to any club I've been with is I give it 100% effort. So what I'm going to do now is fly to Ireland tomorrow to see the players. There are 3 games across there. I'll assess the situation and take it from there.
Well, Alex Totten's been through one major stadium rebuilding job at St Johnstone, and he's now in the middle of another one at Kilmarnock, as you heard there. Rugby Park's capacity will be cut to 13,000 this season as the club completes the building of an 18,000-seat stadium. It's the same story at Kilmarnock, where 20,000 fans will be sitting in comfort by the end of next year. Killie are actually ahead of schedule, as along with Falkirk and Partick Thistle,
Rugby Park got a top-speed refurbishment during the summer, overshadowed by the departure of Tommy Burns and Billy Stark and the arrival of replacement Alec Totten. It's the new manager's 7th club and it's given him a pleasant surprise.
I'll be quite honest with you, I didn't realise it was such a big club because we had an open day last Sunday and there were 10,000 people here. You know, family, it's a right family club, you know, a good club, and I'd love to bring success to this club and any shape or form, so I say I'll do my very best for them.
Robert Connor's been signed on a free from Aberdeen, although Totten has still to get down to spending serious money. Kilmarnock narrowly escaped relegation last season, but they did lead Rangers in the Tennant Scottish Cup semi-finals before losing out.
The chairman says there is money available, so what I've got to do really is spend it wisely. Everything's been very, very hectic because I got appointed a week past Monday. I'm trying to get the team sorted out here, the boys sorted out, but it's a small squad, so obviously I've got to try and add to that. So I'm taking as many games in as I possibly can, and I say I've got to try and spend the money wisely.
Doubting the affection of Totten, who's had to settle quickly into his new surroundings with the league programme so close.
It's been very, very hectic because I just joined a week past Monday, so about 10 or 11 days, and obviously like more time to get settled down, but kind of across the island helped because with 3 games across there and a chance to assess the players, they got to know me, I got to know them, and they're very, very good players and again very good professionals here. The attitude's tremendous, so I've been very impressed, but with a small pool, so obviously I'd like to increase the squad.
In every sense, it's a new era for Killie. The stadium is rapidly changing face, gearing up for the new season, and now the new manager hopes the club can go from strength to strength.
I just really want to bring success to the club in any shape or form. Obviously before a ball is kicked, you've got like say cups to go for, you've got a league to go for, you've got Europe in that, and I just want to bring success to the club, and if I get more quality players in, well, I feel I can do very well here because as I said earlier, I think it is a great club. It's a great environment to come to, and the people here deserve success, so they can be assured that I'll give them 100% effort in everything I do.
Alex Totten back in the big
Meanwhile, it is clear that relationships between the clubs have reached an all-time low.
If he calls emotional blackmail the fact that before he left here I pointed out to him that his choice entered into an extension to his contract, that he had commitments to me as chairman, to the directors, to the fans, to the club, to the players, right? And then point out the consequences to this club, those supporters and those players of him leaving. If that's emotional blackmail, well, check, I would do it again, and I would do it now, because it was my job to ensure that a major asset of this club remained here. And if the only tool left to me was, Tommy, look at the effect this is going to have on this club, then I would do it again. And if it is emotional blackmail, I'm making no apologies for it.
Tommy has accused you of not acting in a dignified manner as would become the chairman of Kilmarnock Football Club.
You know, this is the worst one. In the eve of a match, this is the worst one. And as a direct response of that particular accusation, I did not act, or the chairman of Kilmarnock Football Club did not act in a dignified fashion from an official of Celtic in the eve of a match. I've spoken to my colleagues, and not one official of Kilmarnock Football Club will go to either the boardroom or the director's box at Hampden tomorrow. We will not do that. I can't be accused of that one day and then turn up as if nothing had happened, like a hypocrite. Not acting in a dignified fashion. Someone's still to point out to me in Scottish football what I or Kilmarnock Football Club have done wrong. I told Tommy Burns he would not be allowed to speak to Celtic until we agreed compensation. I didn't say he couldn't, I didn't say he wouldn't. I said he will not be allowed to until we agreed compensation. And that was the advice given to me by everyone. Now, dignified fashion. When this last announcement came out from Tommy Burns, the one that he wanted to get it behind him and accuse me of the same things, we never even responded because that's undignified. We wrote to Celtic immediately after they were fined by the League Management Committee of £100,000. We wrote to them in a very dignified fashion privately and didn't let anyone else know this, asking if we'd get together because we were very concerned about the breach between Kilmarnock and Celtic. Have always had a very close relationship. And the reply came back, not only, I've shown you this, didn't even say no, it said if you feel you get legal action, take them to court. Right? Now that's not what two Scottish football clubs normally do between each other. I mean, that's unheard of. Act in a dignified fashion. I didn't go down to Manchester and clandestinely meet an official of Celtic to discuss whatever they're supposed to have discussed. Right? That's not acting in a dignified fashion. I would say Kilmarnock Football Club have acted in a very dignified fashion.
So you tell me that the directors of Kilmarnock will be among the crowd, among the away support at Hampden tomorrow?
We're very fortunate that we have a group of supporters that we're able to do that. I'm sure there's a lot of chairman and directors would find the thought horrendous, but we're able to do that. What I'm saying is that there'll be no official of Kilmarnock Football Club will attend either the boardroom or the director's box.
to press on with their protest against a £100,000 fine imposed on them for poaching Tommy Burns from Kilmarnock. Managing Director Fergus McCann lodged an appeal with the SFA just inside the 7-day deadline after the Scottish League
against the £100,000 fine imposed upon them by the Scottish League for poaching Tommy Burns from Kilmarnock as their manager. The SFA decided today to shelve any action against Burns and his assistant Billy Stark for breach of contract until after Wednesday's meeting.
Celtic could be expelled from the Scottish League unless they pay a £100,000 fine within the next 2 weeks. The Parkhead club's appeal against the fine, which was imposed for poaching manager Tommy Burns, was thrown out by the SFA today. Celtic say they are discussing their next move with their lawyers, but I understand that Fergus McCann may be willing to take the matter all the way to the law courts. Chief Executive Fergus McCann arrived at the SFA for a last-ditch attempt to overturn the fine for poaching boss Tommy Burns from Kilmarnock. It was unsuccessful.
The Appeals Committee, after 2 hours and 25 minutes of deliberations, decided as follows. 1. That the appeal lodged by Celtic Football Club be dismissed.
That decision vindicated the earlier findings of the Scottish League.
Obviously, it's been unchanged in examination both here and at the Scottish Football League in general meeting.
And the procedure for the payment of the £100,000 fine?
Signature on the basis of a cheque submitted to the Scottish Football League within 14 days.
Failure to sign that cheque means the Scottish League could further fine Celtic, suspend or at worst expel them for breaking its rules. Fergus McCann emerged with nothing to say, but has since issued a statement that the club is talking with its lawyers about their next move. It could be they're considering unprecedented legal action. Meanwhile, as the Tommy Burns affair rumbles on, Kilmarnock, who are still no further forward in their search for compensation, say they too are willing to go to the law courts to get it. On Friday's Sports Scene tonight, Celtic Managing Director Fergus McCann hits back at Lou Macari and Kilmarnock's compensation claims.
We'll be asking, should Scottish football referees be allowed to explain themselves? Celtic Chief Executive Fergus McCann has revealed that the club has lodged a complaint with Florida police accusing Kilmarnock chairman Bob Fleeting of illegal phone taping. Meanwhile, Celtic have been given the go-ahead by Glasgow District Council to build their new stadium at Parkhead.
Now they've secured planning permission, Celtic say they'll soon select the main contractor to start building the new stadium at Parkhead. The club hoping the main arena will be ready for next August. Chief Executive Fergus McCann says Celtic are now considering several options after losing their appeal against the Scottish League's £100,000 fine. But McCann says he'll contest Lou Macari's claim on Celtic for more than £400,000, and Celtic will sue Macari for breach of contract. But the club's relationship with Kilmarnock has worsened, as McCann revealed that Celtic had pursued a complaint with the Florida police, claiming Kilmarnock chairman Bob Fleeting had illegally taped a phone conversation.
It's not an allegation, this is something we felt had happened. We reported to the police, they investigated, and that was the result, that they found that this conversation had been taped by Mr. Fleeting without my knowledge or consent, and we felt this was entrapment on his part, so we pursued a criminal complaint in Florida, and it is being pursued by the police now, I believe.
Is it indeed illegal in Florida to tape a telephone conversation?
Yes, it is a felony there, and the police are taking, it's not really out of our hands, the police are taking action. So.
Are they likely to take action against Bobby Fleeting?
Well, it'll be up to them to decide. If they will proceed further, I don't know, but we've made the report, they have determined that happened, and they'll make their own, whether they want to press charges later, I will find out.
Forbes McFaul's report. A record crowd... Hello, Celtic Managing Director Fergus McCann has broken his silence on the compensation claims lodged by former manager Lou Macari and Kilmarnock chairman Bobby Fleeting. There's also news tonight about the new improved Celtic Park. Chick Young reports.
At the end of the week in which Celtic lost their appeal against a £100,000 fine over the tapping of Tommy Burns, Fergus McCann now believes it's open season on Celtic as far as financial claims are concerned. And tonight he made it clear to Friday Sports Scene that Stoke and Lou Macari have a major battle in their hands and claim for settlements.
I think they've got their manager back, the one they were concerned about losing, so I don't see what their damage is at the moment. So I'm just saying that these are things that have to be worked out. We have to look at the circumstances. You know, Lou Macari, you know, he came here, Stoke let him go, now they want him back, and therefore, presumably, what value have they lost is the point. We'll be making a claim against Mr. Macari for damages that which resulting from his breach of contract here at Celtic.
So far from Lou Macari getting money from Celtic, you think any payment would be going in a different direction?
I would expect that would be the result.
Fergus, I understand you're also making allegations of illegal phone taping by Bobby Fleeting.
Well, it's not an allegation. This is something we felt had happened. We reported to the police, they investigated, and that was the result, that they found that this conversation had been taped by Mr. Fleeting without my knowledge or consent. And we felt this was entrapment on his part. So we pursued a criminal complaint in Florida, and it is being pursued by the police now, I believe.
Is it indeed illegal in Florida to tape a telephone conversation?
Yes, it is a felony there, and the police are taking, it's not really out of our hands, the police are taking action. So.
Are they likely to take action against Bobby Fleeting?
Well, it'll be up to them to decide. If they will proceed further, I don't know, but we've made the report, they have determined that happened, and they'll make their own, whether they want to press charges later, I will find out.
However, there is at least some good news for Celtic tonight. Glasgow City Council Planning Department have announced permission for the rebuilding work to start at Celtic Park. A major contractor will be announced shortly.
With all the latest news, here's Rob McLean.
Thanks, Sally. Celtic's appeal against a £100,000 fine for poaching manager Tommy Burns from Kilmarnock has been thrown out. A special meeting of all 40 league clubs voted overwhelmingly in favour of the punishment. There was only one vote against the guilty charge. Kilmarnock chairman Bobby Fleeting described today's meeting as extremely unpleasant. Celtic said tonight they intend to take the matter further. At a special general meeting of the Scottish League, Fergus McCANN made the case for Celtic's defence. Kilmarnock chairman Bobby Fleeting had no vote, but in any case compensation is what he's after. There were 2 votes taken, Celtic lost on both.
On the first case, on whether they had breached the rules or not, there was 69 votes cast in favour of the management committee and 1 in favour of Celtic. And on the other, on the £100,000 fine, the vote was 65 votes to 5 votes.
There's a big rift now between Celtic and Kilmarnock, not helped by today's 90-minute meeting.
I will confess, I found it very, very unpleasant. Some of the things that were said, which obviously can't go into, I found extremely unpleasant, and I would say that every single person there, except Fergus McCann, found it very unpleasant. And some of the things that were said disappointed me and disappointed everyone else in football. I intended saying nothing, but after one particular incident, I did stand up and spoke, and all of us were sitting in shock, and I in fact said that if the breach was bad before, I'll tell you something, there's a damn sight worse now.
When Celtic Chief Executive Fergus McCann left the league meeting, he chose to say nothing. Later, the club issued a statement. It said Celtic Football Club does not agree with the decision and will be taking the matter further. At present, we are continuing with the appeal process. That seems likely to mean the matter goes now to the SFA, who will also consider taking action against Tommy Burns and Billy Stark in a fortnight's time. Meanwhile, Kilmarnock are still seeking compensation.
Now, Celtic's management duo Tommy Burns and Billy Stark have each been fined £2,000 by the SFA for breaking their playing contracts when they moved to Parkhead in the summer. The SFA has also issued Celtic's MD Fergus McCann with a 21-day deadline to settle his compensation row with Kilmarnock. Failure to do so could result in Tommy Burns being suspended as manager.
Burns and Stark were summoned for what was to be a mammoth 4-hour hearing at the SFA headquarters. Chief Executive Jim Farry announced their decision.
The committee upheld the complaint by Kilmarnock and decided that players Burns and Stark be fined the sum of £2,000 each to be paid within 14 days from the date of decision, and that in respect of Article 123 both players be suspended from all football as players.
Burns and Stark had no comment to make, as it was also announced that Celtic have been ordered to agree compensation with Kilmarnock by the 7th of December. But how much?
We don't want something that's unfair. I mean, Celtic agreed compensation with Stoke City, right, for the Macari, and that involved a sum of money. Rangers in the past have acquired assistant managers from other clubs, and that's involved certain sums of money. We're not looking for any more than these sort of things. We still have 2 players, 2 contracted players working with Celtic, and that is obviously not what Scottish football's about. That's not the way it's meant to be. We have a game coming up against Celtic a week Saturday, and a ridiculous situation where I've got 2 contracted players in one dugout and 3 contracted players in the other dugout.
Tommy Burns and Billy Stark and Kilmarnock chairman Bobby Fleeting appealed for fair play. Today the Parkhead Club issued a statement saying while Mr Bob Fleeting continues to use the media to air his agenda, it seems unlikely for now that confidential and productive discussions can take place. However, we will be contacting Kilmarnock Football Club again in an effort to resolve this dispute in a reasonable fashion. Bobby Fleeting responded, "Mr McCann's statement is insulting. I have no agenda with regard to Celtic. The only confidential discussions so far were disrupted when Celtic themselves gave the story to the press."
And still with Celtic, the SFA's Executive Committee meets tomorrow to consider the club's failure to resolve its compensation dispute with Kilmarnock. The clubs were ordered to settle their differences by the 1st of December, but have failed to do so. Between Celtic and Kilmarnock over the poaching of Tommy Burns and Billy Stark will be settled by the SFA's arbitration procedures. At today's meeting of the association's Executive Committee, the clubs could not reach an agreement over Kilmarnock's compensation claim.
And Celtic ordered to pay £200,000 for Burns. Here's Rob McLean. Rob.
Thanks, Jackie. Celtic have been ordered to pay Kilmarnock £200,000 in compensation for poaching their management team of Tommy Burns and Billy Stark. That was the ruling of an independent tribunal after the clubs failed to reach a settlement. Celtic were fined £100,000 last summer when the Scottish League Management Committee ruled they'd made an illegal approach to offer Burns their manager's job. Burns and Stark have been at the centre of the dispute between Kilmarnock and Celtic since leaving Rugby Park for Parkhead last July. Today's tribunal ruling, after 3 days of hearing evidence, means Celtic must pay even more for the way they hired their new managers. Tonight, Bobby Fleeting gave his reaction to today's news.
The first thing towards trying to repair this rift is that Kilmarnock Football Club will release Tommy Burns and Billy Stark as players, which will enable them perhaps to work with young players and the reserve team, etc. And you know, it's a shame to lose the skill they have, right? And a lot of young people can learn from them. So the first thing I want to do is release them from that commitment to Kilmarnock, and they can go on with their life and we can go on with ours. But as I say, it's important to me that the Kilmarnock fans now get behind the club and recognise what Tommy Burns did for this club.
Celtic Managing Director Fergus McCann said tonight he's disappointed with the costly result to the club of the tribunal and Scottish League decisions on the matter. But he said he's pleased the issue has now been concluded and the club will now focus its attention on winning the Tennent's Scottish Cup.
And up final, Celtic have been ordered to pay £200,000 compensation today to Kilmarnock. It follows Celtic's recruitment of manager Tommy Burns and assistant Billy Stark from Kilmarnock last summer.